Hi, I'm Alistair Green. Welcome back to the third of our series, Let's Talk Permissions Manager. So today we're going to be focusing more on some advanced features of Permissions Manager. The first two videos in the series focused on some of the basic functionality, be able to view and see what permissions were in place and make some simple changes to permissions using some of the basic functionality. Today we're going to be looking at how that all comes together in a more advanced way. So we can look at some of the more advanced features, but also look at a use case, how you might like to use, use Permissions Manager in an example, and that's going to be presented by one of our consultants, Renita D, who joined Fastman a couple of months ago only, and has put together this video, which we're going to watch now. And as you watch it, you'll be able to see her using some of the advanced features. And after we've watched the video, we'll go back and we'll break it down a little bit and show you what those features are and what they're doing under the covers and how you can use them in your business situations that you might come across. So real world business situations. So at this point, I'll hand over to Renita and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Hi, I'm Pranita from Fastman. Today I'm going to demonstrate our permission manager for litigation use case where we are also working with different type of business workspaces. So here I have a procurement folder, and as it goes, we are having some issues with a particular vendor. So I'll switch into the classic UI, and then I will just search for the vendor number. It can also be a safe search that you're using, but over here, because I had the vendor number in the workspace name, I'm just going to use it. Here I have like different types of workspaces. So I have the vendor workspace, I have contract, and I do have purchase orders as well. I'm going to collect each of them into a collection for me to make it easier to work on at a later point of time. So I'm just going to create a new one. I'm going to name it legal case hash, maybe 123 is my case number, and I'm going to browse it and put it into our litigation folder. So here I am. I'll go to enterprise and then just put it under the litigation folder that we have. So once I have it submitted over here, it's going to ask me if I want to open the collection, and this is where I want to use it. So let me go back, open it here, and I'm going to maybe I'm going to apply hold on it as well because there's a legal case. So maybe select the hold and apply that. As part of the process, I also, yeah, it's already applied. So as part of the process, I also want to update the permissions a little bit. So I'm going to launch my permission manager from here. And this is going to help me in having a look around. So as you can see that each of the workspace have a different permission model. So the POs have account payables and procurement. The contract have the procurement team, 2 roles. And then we also have the vendor where the master data and the procurement team is there. I want to add the legal team now to the access group so that they can view the documents within each of these vendor workspaces. So for that, I'm going to use this virtual permission option here, and then click on the edit permission on the collection. If I have a template, I can load it here. So if you see, I have the legal team. I also want the procurement and the PR team to be having CC content. And then I also have like a few groups added here. So if I want to use this, I'll use it. Or if I want to clean it up a little bit, like I just want the legal teams to be there, I can clean it up over here, apply, and submit. So as I do that, you can see that I have updated the virtual permission. So these are not the permission of the actual collection. It's just a virtual permission that I have applied here so that I can update the sub items. So with this being said, I want to copy this to permission into all the sub items. So I click on these two and I say copy permission by selecting on all the items here. Once I've done that, I can say to what level of documents I want to do all the levels, or what type of items I want to apply it to. I'm going to say all and just going to do a quick review of it. So here it's going to refresh the page in a few seconds, update, and then I just want to copy the permission. So it's going to apply that to one role and one group access to all the workspaces and the sub items underneath it. So if you review now, you can see the legal role was created for each of the workspace. So you can add individual users if needed. And then you have the legal case group, which is also added, which may be your permanent team who's working on this case. After a few days or months, once the litigation is over, I want to make sure that my permissions are reverted back. So what I can simply do at that moment is maybe use one of our web reports to find out exactly at what moment the change happened so that I know the timing. You can see at this timing it happened and it's 140, and then I can use this to roll back the permission. So I select all the items underneath this collection. I say roll back. I say owner, group, public access, and assign. I do not have roles here, and we'll come to that in a minute. I apply the timing. So I'm just going to put 3 o'clock here. I'll say preview, and it's going to have a quick check whether what's going to change. If I want to review it, I can click on the details so that it shows me exactly what's going to happen. And then once I am happy with it, I'll just say roll back. And this is going to roll back all the changes that has happened from that moment onwards to today, so that I go back to my operations as usual. So you can see that the legal group is been removed, but the legal role is not. So for that, you can simply go into replace over here. You can put in legal and you say remove and you say all the item and then just say replace user. This is going to revoke the legal role from all the sub items which are underneath it, and you can see the legal role is also gone. So now you are back to the permissions where you have started it, but it was quite easy to add the legal teams to the permission access using the dashboard. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Okay, I think you'll agree that was a very interesting little demonstration from Anita. So what we'd like to do now is we'll just break it down a little bit and go through some of the functions that she used on the video, and show you how they relate to the overall management of permissions and how they work in the background, so you can see the different components and how they all work together. So let's start with the basic edit permissions approach she took. So she used a collection to work with the items that she found, and to get that collection together, she used just a simple content suite search, extended ECM search function. Nothing exciting, but through that, she was able to come up with as you can see on the screen here, she was able to come up with the collection and run permissions manager on a collection, which in itself is a fairly advanced feature. So being able to do manage permissions on a collection, and the collection in this case includes items that are in different parts of the organization, relate to purchase orders and procurement functions, the vendors themselves. So a whole range of different items and locations. So just the ability to be able to find, to search, to collect, and then run permissions manager on those items. So the next thing she did was she went in and worked out that she needed to be able to use virtual permissions for the changes she needed to make. Now the virtual permissions aspect is driven from this toolbar on the top of the display of the dashboard, and you recall that she clicked on the virtual permissions and then went to edit permissions. Now what edit permissions does is it's just the same as an edit permissions would be if you were in items, but it adds the feature of being able to select a template. So if I just unselect that, I can unselect it both in the main dashboard or in the item itself. You'll see that templates piece disappears. And the really cool thing about that, before we move on, is where those templates are saved. So if you go up to the top of your dashboard, your normal user interface, you'll find that there's a permissions template volume. And the permissions template volume is where the templates can be saved and stored and manipulated or access controlled. So in this case, as always, I'm logged on as admin. And when I'm logged on as admin, I will be able to see all the permissions templates that exist, both for my own user ID and also for all the other users that have been using or creating permissions templates in this system. So if I just click on permissions template volume, you'll see I'll have all of the standard, I'll have some standard permissions templates. And if I click on those, it comes up in the same edit permissions screen that you'll be used to seeing. So if you want to create a permissions template, you don't actually need to do it through the virtual permissions functionality. You can actually just do it directly from the library. The volume, I should say, just by adding an item over here, and it'll add a permissions template. You can create what you want, or you can actually just create it against items on the system itself, and then save the template. I can show you how to do that. So in that case, I can see the permissions that have been set up for this level, and also for personal permissions templates. And if I open that folder up, you'll see that in here I've got a couple of different folders. And if I run permissions manager on this being a container, I can run permissions manager. You can see that admin is the owner of the admin permissions permissions template folder, and Fastman demo is the owner of the Fastman demo folder, as you'd expect. And if I come in here and I go and type in demo and I look for that and I apply that, you'll see that Fastman demo cannot see the admin's personal templates. I apologize for that. So very effective use, and here's an example of using permissions manager itself and permissions to manage access to contents. And it's the same with categories. If you're familiar with the categories volume, it's exactly the same there. If you want to see who can access which categories and you're using permissions to control that, you can go to the categories volume and see what access particular users have got to specific categories, which is really handy if you're wondering why some people can and can't see. I won't go into the details, but so I'll clear that. Let's move back a bit. So this is why we have our personal workspaces. So that's where the permissions template volume can be accessed from. So Renita used that when she went into the collection, and she also used she created or modified the permissions that she was going to apply. And I'll just repeat what she did there. If I edit the permissions here and I use the legal hold, you'll recall she went through here and she removed all of the groups that she didn't want having access through this legal litigation, and she removed them. Now, in my case, I would probably also remove or downgrade public access, or public access is already removed. I apologize, but the default group, so anyone who's in the default group shouldn't have access, so I'd probably do that as well. But to make sure that she was able to add the legal and the legal group the legal role, the legal group, she did this. She applied it, and she got the same warning we just got here. I'll pull that down a bit more so it's centered. So we submitted it, and then we went through and we applied those to the items below. And that's what she did. And then once she's finished, she went back and she found out using the web reports interface how or when those permissions have been applied. And she then used the rollback function to be able to remove those permissions at the end of the case, at the end of the litigation period. That removed the group and any other permissions that have been granted. And then she used the remove and replace user function to remove the legal role. So we haven't applied the legal role, so it's not actually going to pop it up as a pop-up, but that's what she did. And so very quickly and very easily, she was able to create access to the legal team to these items for the duration of the litigation without affecting any of the access that is actually being used required by the business to do their jobs. So really simple little case study of how you can use Permissions Manager to drill into, to manage particular use cases. So that we covered off a few things here. We've covered off the virtual permissions. We've covered off the templates, which is really important. We've talked about how roles can be managed as well as groups and users. So that's important as well. So between those two things, we've covered off a fair bit of ground. And you can see that even now, I can still expand and collapse those items if I want to, from the same dashboard. So all the basic functionality is there. If she'd wanted to, she could have replaced rather than copied. So she could have completely removed access. Now, in some cases, that might be the case. You could also remove and replace and downgrade the roles and the groups that are already there. So if you choose to do that, you can. So all those options are available to you as an operator or user of Permissions Manager. Very simple, very straightforward. So let's move on a little bit now, and let's talk about the administration side of the system. Let's talk a bit about the sorts of things that you can do as a system admin or as a business admin to be able to manage access to Permissions Manager and the sort of setup things that you might like to do. Okay, so here we are back in the Permissions Manager dashboard. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump across into the administrator pages. If you're a business administrator, you'll have access to the business admin pages. If you're a system administrator, of course, you'll have access to the system administrator pages. What we're going to do is use a couple of different user IDs. We're going to start with the admin user, who's got power to do all, to do everything. And we'll see what configuration options are available in the product. Then we'll look at a couple of different users. The Fastman demo user is the first one, and we'll just look at what a user has got if they've got full access to everything in the system. And just a really simple example of what happens when we turn off access to individuals and how we can do that. So we'll use another user called Sam Crocker to see how that works. So let's first of all start by going across to the administration pages in Extended ECM or Content Suite. And we'll look at the configuration options available for the business admin. So the business admin's got access to all of these settings, and these are global settings. These are settings you can use to turn things on or off, regardless of the user, regardless of the usage privileges that have been set up. So for example, down here, you could say, I want to turn rollback off. And I'm going to pick on rollback as a classic example. So I could turn rollback off and save it. And then the rollback feature itself will no longer be available to all users. So I'll save that. And now let's go back to the dashboard, Permissions Manager for Permissions Manager, and I'll refresh that because the screen's, and you'll see that it's gone. So rollback is no longer available for anybody, including the admin. So now let's go back to the business admin settings. We'll turn it back on again. And you'll notice that one of the things that I could do then is I could do that without actually having to restart services in the back end. So there's only one or two settings in the whole of Permissions Manager that will need you to reset the settings. So I'll turn that on. Rollback would help if I did the right thing, wouldn't it? So I'll save that. And now let's go back to that same place we were just a minute ago and refresh that screen. And you'll see rollback's back. So very simple, very straightforward. That's the sort of thing you can do using the business admin settings in the administration side. There are a whole raft of different settings you can change here. For example, some of the detail options when you get to making copies and changes and so on, you can do all that from here. You could change the color if you wanted to, the highlight color. So those sorts of things are available to the business administrators. You don't need to be a system administrator to do that. So in a modern world, that's the sort of thing that in a cloud environment that the customer or the customer would have access to, whereas the system admin side of things is typically the sorts of things that you have access to if you are the system administrator. And you'll see that there are a lot of technical things going on here, and these things are here because they relate primarily to the functioning of the product, if you like, and they can affect the performance of the product and also the way the use of the product affects the core system. Because as we've said before, you can do a lot of things with Permissions Manager and make a lot of changes quickly. And if you allow that to go unchecked in a busy system or highly used system, then you can get yourself in a bit of trouble. The one thing you should remember I mentioned a second ago or a minute ago that you can do these changes without doing service restarts. So let's say, for example, you need to do a big change and you need to affect 1 million items. At 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening, when the users go home, when the system's available, you can go in here, make this change without doing a system restart. Go and make the change you know you need to make, and then once it's complete, come back in and reset it back to the standard settings for tomorrow's normal business day. Very handy, very straightforward. Now, I won't go through all of these details here, but you can see, for example, that you're able to, in the search function, you can turn searching on or off based on different types of objects. So, you can see here that we've just got documents, folders, business workspaces, and tasks. And if you remember, we go back to the search function, they're the options that turn up in the, if I just flick back quickly to the Permissions Manager and let's go to search, you'll see down here, these are the options that have turned up in the bottom here in the include list. So if I go back to the administration page, oops, I'll have to do that. Sorry about that. I can go back in here to the administrator, and you'll see that they are the settings that have been defined in the position search settings. So that's true of a number of different areas in the system. So 2 or 3 different areas in the system. So it's really handy, very straightforward, and easy to work with. Now let's jump across a little bit. We're pretty short of time. So what we'll do is we'll jump across and we'll look at the usage privileges, how you can set up access for different users. So this is done through the standard content server usage privileges screen. And just like when Renita was showing us the demo before with the business workspaces and the collections, because this is just core content suite extended ECM, you're not going to have a lot of problems learning how this works. So you're not going to need to worry too much about teaching people. It's very straightforward, very intuitive. Now, what we're going to do is focus again on rollback. So look at rollback, and you can see that I've got a restriction in place for the permissions rollback. And if I look at that, just edit it, you can see that the only group members that have that currently are Alistair, myself, my own personal, and Fastman Demo. So if anybody else logs into the system and uses Permissions Manager, apart from the admin user, of course, they're not going to be able to access the rollback function. And I'll show you what that looks like. So let's go back and let's log out, and let's log in as Fastman Demo. So I'll log out here and I'll log in as Fastman Demo. I've got that saved in my cache. So very quick, very simple, very straightforward. And I'll go across to my Fastman Demo folder and I'll run Permissions Manager. And you'll see that Fastman Demo, as the user Fastman Demo, has got the rollback function available. Good, same standard stuff. Let's log out and I'll log in as a Sam Crocker. Excuse the typing. I got that right. It's fairly convoluted. I'm now logged in as Sam Crocker, and I go across to my demo folder and I run Permissions Manager. I'm already there. Actually, the link takes me straight there. You'll notice no rollback. So very simple, very straightforward. Now you could do that for all of these functions. If we go back to the usage privileges side of things, you could do that for all of these and basically take away all of the ability for anyone to make changes to permissions in here. Now you'll notice that if I go in here and filter, I can still filter. He's got access to filter. You'll see that because Sam has got the ability to be able to edit permissions, he's got edit permissions rights to this corporate services folder. Whether that's good or bad is completely up to the business to decide. And you'll see the edit permissions appears. But just to reassure you that if the user in this example does not have edit permissions rights, that edit permissions button does not appear, and it's just standard sort of functionality. It still shows you the effective permissions that the person's got, but it's not going to give you the ability to bypass the standard defaults. Well, that concludes this third part of the short series, Let's Talk Permissions Manager. I hope you enjoyed the series, and I hope you found it useful if you're an existing customer in your use of the product and how you can extend the use into other scenarios. If you're not an existing customer and you would like more information about the product, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at info@fastman.com. We're more than happy, of course, to show you how it can be relevant in your organization. Thank you very much.